Hi everyone, time goes really fast and here we are with another live session, Friday, a skilled migration live sessions. So I've done 2 episodes already over the last 2 weeks and this is our third session. As you already know, we are Australian registered migration agents. Our head office based in Brisbane, Australia, and we have offices in Sri Lanka and few other countries as well, and we help people every day with their Australian immigration visa matters relating to all subclasses. So before we go any further, I'll just want to quickly talk about what we talked about last week and the week before, give a bit of a recap. If you're interested in Australian skill migration, I highly recommend you to watch these live sessions because I'm trying my best to give you the tips and tricks and all the things you need to know to achieve your Australian migration dream. So the first week we talked about what are the visa subclasses available for skilled migrants, and the subclasses are subclass 189, which is independent skilled migration. You get direct permanent residency. You need 65 points to lodge an EOI. A state doesn't give you any points, but this is the kind of best visa when it comes to the applicants. And the second one is subclass 190. This is a state-based migration program. Different states have different requirements for different occupations. If you're going through subclass 190, the state gives you 5 points. At the same time, the state expects you to live in that state for 2 years once the visa is granted. Again, this is permanent residency. It's a great visa. Subclass 491, a lot of people are interested, a lot of people are applying for this visa. Again, state-based program, but it's based in regional area and it's not direct permanent residency. It's a provisional visa granted for 5 years. If you come and live in that regional and work in the regional for 3 financial years, at the end you are eligible to apply for subclass 191. So this is a very rough breakdown of what I talked in week 1, and the week 2 we went into the next stage of applying for a EOI, expression of interest. I explained what it is, and also we went through a detailed breakdown of the point system. So as you know, Australian skilled migration is still a points based system and you have to meet minimum points in order to go for a skilled migration. Mario, do we have a slide for the points or no? It's fine, we haven't got a slides for the points. So you get points for your age, your English, your Australian work experience, offshore work experience, your qualification, your Australian study, professionally a program if you've done one, and if you know a community language like Nati, you get points for that. If you don't have a partner, you get 10 points, but if you do have a partner, if the partner has skills, you can get 5 points, and if the partner has English, you can get 5 points. So that's the breakdown of the point system. We go through it every day. I talk to at least 5 to 6 clients a day explaining the points table, so I remember it by heart. So today, again, a very important topic. We have very limited time, so I will try my best to go through each and every one and explain it to you, but I just want to tell you that I may not be able to cover everything when it comes to skills assessment because it's a vast area. Actually, we've been doing this for years, and sometimes we even come across occupations where we don't know and we've never done it before because there are about 600 odd occupations. So to get a skills assessment for each one of them has different criteria. So it's very important to figure out what is my occupation out of these 600 something occupations, and how do I get a skill assessment? Who do I contact? Where do I go from there? So the main what's a skills assessment? So a skill assessment is sort of getting an authority to certify that your qualifications and work experience are in accordance with Australian standards for an occupation, to put it very simply. So there are main skill assessing authorities that we deal with. Mario, can we go to that slide? Thank you. No. Yes. So first one that we always come across is Engineers Australia. So if you're in an engineering profession, civil engineers, construction engineers, marine engineers, electronic engineers. There are vast number of engineers. All of these engineers, as well as engineering associates, and some other engineering professions that are in skill level 2, which means they only require a diploma, has to go through Engineers Australia. The requirement changes based on whether you studied onshore or if you have your qualification from back home. So if you studied in an Australian university, for example, if you have your bachelor's degree from University of Queensland or Queensland University of Technology, and you completed your studies while you're here onshore as an international student, you don't need anything else to get a skill assessment. You only need that qualification to get a qualification assessment. But if you studied in a country where your qualification is not under the under a specific award, then you have to go through a completely different pathway. So when it comes to Engineers Australia, what I want to tell you, you may need English. So if someone didn't study in Australia, the applicant needs English 6 in each band academic. So that's the English requirement. And then you need to have a qualification. So they need to look at your qualification. They normally ask for a copy of the qualification and also a copy of the transcript. And if the qualification is not in English, they normally ask for a translation. So we provide these, then they look at the qualification, and depending on where you studied, they may ask for they may ask you to go through a pathway called CDR, Competency Demonstration Report Pathway. So as I said, depending on where you studied, which country, and if your qualifications, depending on the level of accreditation for your qualification, your requirement changes. So the first thing to look at is where you studied and how recognized your qualification is. Based on that, there'll be different other requirements. And then again, if you want to get your work experience assessed, that's a different process. Then you need to provide employment letters, either CDR reports or pay slips and other evidence of employment. You may have to write your own personal statement explaining the job duties you perform. So what they're trying to understand there is, okay, did this person's work experience, were they in the same level as the expectation for an Australian who's performing the same duty? So that's Engineers Australia very briefly for you. And then next one is VET Assess. VET Assess assesses the most number of occupations. So they do 28 trade occupations and about 360 professional occupations. So all these tradies with welders, fitters, chefs, cooks, as well as restaurant managers and other occupations go through VET Assess. The requirement again changes whether you studied in Australia or outside. Normally, if you studied outside for a trade occupation, they want you to have a qualification and 3 years experience. But professional qualification, they only need 1 year experience. That can also change based on your occupation though. But VET Assess do not need you to have English, unlike Engineers Australia, to start your skill assessment. So if you are working with a assessing authority where they don't need you to do English, which means you can start your skill assessment earlier. The next one is IPA, which we mainly use for our accounting graduates. So to get a skills assessment for an accounting graduate, they must have English, IELTS 7 in each band. So that's a requirement for accountants. So without that, we can't even start getting the skills assessment started. But if you do have the English, then the next one is your qualification. So with IPA or CPA, it's again 2-step process. We can first get your qualification assessed, and for employer nominated visas like subclass 186 and some visas, you only need the qualification assessment. But when it comes to the skill migration, especially when you want to get points for your work experience, then we normally get the skills assessment covering both qualification assessment as well as your work experience assessment. Again, IPA, CPA for accountants, so it could be accountants, external auditors, internal auditors, taxation accountant, management accountant, financial accountant. There are again many occupations covered in through IPA and CPA. And the next one is IML, managers and leaders. So if you are if we are getting a senior manager's position accredited, then we normally go to IML, so managing director, that kind of occupation. Again, we don't really come across these skills assessments too much, but then when it comes to that, you again need to prove that you have a qualification and highly related work experience, and you will have to most likely write a statement, get the employer references, pay slips, and another kind of payment evidence to prove any work experience. Next one, very important, it's TRA. No, the next one I can't see. No, the one after that. It's which one's that?
Nurses.
The next one is NMAC. Yes. Again, we come across this a lot. So for nurses, if you're a nurse, qualified nurse in a country other than Australia, then it's a whole different story. For you to get qualified in Australia, you have to go through a pathway depending on which country you're from. I'll actually cover that in a whole different session, because that's a big area and we have a lot of interest coming from people who are offshore, nurses wanting to come and work in Australia. There's a huge demand. If you can get your skills assessment and your certifications done, then I think registrations done, it's going to be easy to find a job for nurses for the next few years from what we've seen. So again, for this, to get a skills assessment for a nurse, you go to NMAC, but before that you need to get the nursing registration from Ep3. For that, you need IELTS, English, again academic 7 in each band. Then you need to have the qualification, and if you don't have work experience, then you can just get your qualification assessed. But if you have work experience, then we can do your work experience assessment later, once you have your work experience. So that's NMAC for nurses and some other health professionals. And the next one is TRA, Trade Recognition Australia. We don't need English for the occupations in TRA. They assess trade qualifications, so we mostly go to TRA for all our trade qualifications. And also if someone studied in Australia, they're going through the job ready program, then again we get all of them done through TRA. You don't need English, you need a qualification, and you need work experience as well. And the last one is ACS, Australian Computer Society. Quite difficult to deal with, because their policies are a bit difficult and they keep changing over time as well. We are sometimes struggling proving work experience, because they have very strict policy what kind of documentation we need to prove the work experience. If we can't get that, because some IT employers, they don't like to give employment letters, and we do come across a lot of issues getting this work experience proved. So what I want to say when talking about this is, it's very important to get your skill assessment right the first time. If you don't, then you've already given the skill assessing authority all your documentation, so you can't change them too much. But they want different set of documents, or they think, okay, this is not your occupation. Based on the documents you have given, we don't think that this is your occupation. So again, want to highlight, if you're thinking of skill migration and if you're going through a process of getting a skill assessment, really important, if you don't know what you're doing, stop it right now and get some professional help. Australian registered migration agents, make sure they're a registered migration agent, they have a MARN, you go and check that they are registered, so you know that this is what they do. And they do deal with skills assessments all the time. We have a separate person who works with me doing skills assessment, because it's a whole completely different set of documents and rules and policies. Even from visas it's different. So I work with them quite regularly, and then we know that how difficult it can be to get the skill assessment right the first time, and if you do that, then it's valid for 2 years and you can use the skill assessment and save a lot of money and move on to the next step. So that's ACS for you. We've got some time left, so I will actually go through some of the recent skills assessment that we have done. So to think about a recent skill assessment where we were struggling a bit, where the applicant didn't have there is one chef skill assessment that we have worked on recently. This chef worked overseas but didn't really have a formal qualification. So I just want to tell you that it is still possible. So what happened in this case, when we approached the skill assessing authority, they required this chef to have a formal qualification. So what they do in this case, they look at all his work experience and they ask for some evidence of work and evidence of him actually doing the work of a chef, like some photos and videos, and based on that, first they give him the qualification, a certificate for or a diploma qualification, that is the base that person needs in order to get the skill assessment. Then together with that qualification, then they move to the next stage of doing the technical interviews. So then they look at the practical side of the work, and then the final result is then they give the skills assessment. So here what I want to mention is, for some of the skills assessments, you don't need to have a formal qualification. If you have enough work experience, normally to cover a diploma, you need 3 years worth of full-time work experience. And to cover for a bachelor's degree, you need 5 years worth of full-time work experience. So if you have that, there are instances where we can get you a qualification and then get you the skills assessment. So just based on the fact that I don't have a qualification doesn't mean that you can't move forward. So there can be a way forward. So that's what I want to mention about skills assessment. I hope you got some of the information that you need and it's a bit clearer. Again, what I want to highlight is getting the skills assessment right the first time is highly important, and without the skill assessment you can't move forward with your skilled migration. Now let's move to questions, because I can see that there are some questions. I've got Chetan Gol asking sales representative, medical and pharmaceutical products. Yes, actually we have done a skills assessment for a sales representative. It is possible to do it, but then in this case we need the person needs to have a qualification, also work experience, but we will have to highlight and show how the work experience is related to especially medical and pharmaceutical products. If the person worked in a non-medical and pharmaceutical background, then obviously we can't prove that this person worked in the field. So if they have any other sales work experience, that will not be counted as relevant. So Chetan, it is possible, but then we need to prove that the work experience is highly relevant to the field. I hope that's a bit clear. I've got Shanki asking, I am teacher by profession, having 13 years of work experience. My IELTS is 8, 8.5, 6.5 and 8. This is really good IELTS result, Shanki, because I'll tell you why in a bit. Can I apply for skill retake, then apply one skill retake, then apply for PR? I don't understand what you mean. Maybe I think you want to take IELTS just to improve one band and then want to apply for permanent residency, because for teacher we need 88 and 77, so you have 3 888s, and but you have a 6.5. Most likely a skill assessing authority does accept 2 IELTS that's done within 6 months. Could you please send us an email to admin@sirus.com.au? I will look into this more and I will confirm whether you can go with retake of IELTS just for that one band with this for this skills assessment. I've got Karthik asking, can I apply my PR with one field, engineering, and work in a different domain, data scientist, after receiving my PR visa approved for 189, 190, 491 while meeting the salary requirement? Yes, Karthik, that is a really good question. Yes and yes. So you can apply for permanent residency with engineer and then work in data scientist. For all 3 visas, 189, 190 and 491, yes, you can do that. You can work in a different field once the visa is granted. 189, 190 doesn't matter anyway because you are a permanent resident. They're not going to come and see what work you do. There is not even a requirement for you to work for 189 and 190. You can do a business, or you can not do anything at all. But with 491, it's a bit tricky. 491, you have to stay in that region or a different regional area in the state, and you have to work. But then again, you don't need to work as a data scientist or engineer at all. You can work as anything you like, as long as you meet the income requirement, which is the minimum threshold. Right now the minimum threshold is 53,900. Okay, but it's changing, which I will tell you in a little bit. That's some news that we heard yesterday, some really big news for anyone who's interested in coming to Australia for any visas. So I'll talk about it a little bit as well. To answer your question, yes, you don't need to be working in your nominated occupation. In Australia, Paradise is asking, I have changed my company after getting the positive skill assessment and now it will expire next year. How easy it is to renew it and what's the process of renewing it? My occupation remained the same. It is very easy to renew your skill assessment. So maybe start the process before it expires. If you're dealing with Vet Assess or few other skill assessing authorities, they do have a different section just to get your skill assessment renewed. You may have to give some new work experience after obtaining your skill assessment, but it is possible. I've got Australia Paradise asking, I left my previous company after 7 years of experience and had different designations during that time. Do I mention just my last designation in the EOI or all the designations that I held? Maybe please get in touch with me, because that's somewhere you can really lose or score points. So what you're asking is, if you held different designations but if you were performing the same job duties, so you could be junior accountant, intermediate accountant, senior accountant, advisor accountant, but you were doing the same job duties over the 7 years, you should break down your career episodes, but you should put in the EOI that's they're all relevant. So you know how when you do your EOI, you can say whether it's relevant or not. If you select it's relevant, then they'll start counting points for that career episode. So get in touch with me. I will check and tell you whether they're relevant or not if you're not sure. And if they are, I think we should mention that all episodes, and then do mention that it's relevant, so you can claim the maximum points. Because if you work 7 years or 8 years, if it's offshore, then you can claim I think you can claim 15 points for work experience, which you don't want to miss. Before I move to my next question, I just want to say that some news we heard yesterday. We've been hearing a lot of migration news over the past few weeks, and I know that we are going to be hearing a lot more news up until July, because there's going to be a major reform of the Australian, the whole immigration system from what we've seen. So they've first to start with, they've stopped the permanent residency for New Zealand citizens, and they stopped the 188 business migration, and then they announced, I think about 4 days ago, the New Zealand citizens who've been living in Australia for a while, they're going to be eligible for direct citizenship, Australian citizenship. That's really big news for all the New Zealand residents, New Zealand citizens who's living in Australia, because I know there's a really big crowd or really big cohort of people out there who previously had to go through a whole system of getting their Australian permanent residency and then move to citizenship. Now all these people are suddenly from 1st of July eligible to apply for citizenship. Really big news. And there's even a bigger news came out yesterday. From July, there was something called TSMIT, which is the minimum level of wage an employer has to pay for or to offer their employee if they want to go through subclass 482 or the TSS or the work visa, the same thing. But now from July, that TSMIT, which was $53,900 plus tax and super, it's going to go up to $70,000 plus tax and super. Again, very big news. So it's a $15,000-$20,000 difference in pay if you want to hire someone, and if you are offering them $55,000 to $60,000, now it has to be $70,000 from 1st of July. Again, big news. I'll go back to questions now. Pradeep Singh's asking, please talk about subclass 482 labor agreement, because I applied November 2022. Today 5 months complete, but my visa is not granted. Only show the application is received on IME account. Bit strange again, Pradeep. Labor agreements normally really fast, plus the 482 are getting granted quite fast now. The ones that we lodge in the last 2 to 3 weeks to a month has been getting grants in days. I'm talking like 12 days, 10 days, 2 weeks. So maybe your employer can follow up from their side. They can explain that your occupation or the position is highly needed, so they would really like you to get the visa. So you're a chef as well. So chef, it's again a really good occupation. I don't know how you went through the labor agreement. Is it a Dharma? Can you please let me know so I can get a better understanding? But anyway, 5 months is quite a long time for a 482. If you've done everything from your side, if you've lodged the visa, you've done your medicals, done your police clearances, I think you should follow up and see what's going on. I've got Karthik asking, thank you. Further to my question about my IELTS results. Okay, Karthik. Can I apply PR with one of the field engineering? Okay, yeah, can you go down? Listening 7.5, 7.5, 6.5. Am I eligible to proceed? Can you go up a bit? Karthik. Karthik, so your English is fine and you're fine to apply for the skill assessment as well. But for me to tell you if you can apply for a EOI, if you haven't done that, I need to know more. I need to know. So this is your English. Right now you don't get any points for your English because you have 6.5. If you were to get point, you need 7 in each band, then you will get 10 points. But I need to look at your other, the one that we talked about last week, the points table. So we need to go through the points table and see how many points you score. Then I can figure out if you're eligible to lodge an EOI. Send us an email, admin@sirus.com.au, Karthik. Then I will give you a consultation. We can talk about your points and see what are your chances, and then we can get a EOI started. I've got Australia Paradise who's asking about the employer saying, so it is 70,000 income requirement for the 491. No, please don't get confused. So this 70,000 that I mentioned are for employer nominated visas, which is subclass 482 and 494. It is not there for the subclass 494. Subclass 494 is the state nominated visa, not the employer nominated. So state nominated, right now they have not given any requirement, but if TISMIT changes and if that TISMIT applies to 491, then once you get the visa, you are required to earn $70,000. But at this stage, we don't know if this TISMIT will be applied to both 491 and 482 or just the 482 visas. We will get to know within the next month or so. Once we get to know, I will either talk about this in a live session or I will do a YouTube video like we normally do with immigration updates, and or it'll be online, you'll get to hear. I've got Lydia asking, please, I want to know meaning if I have IELTS, I don't qualify or something else. Because I'm maintenance technician by profession with 8 years experience with holding a technician certificate and relevant certificate. Do I still qualify for that? You do need English, but from what you're telling me, I don't think you need English to get your skill assessment. But you will need English to prove your English to lodge an EOI and go through the skill migration process. So when I mentioned some skill assessing authorities don't need English, which is right, but you still need English for the point system and to go through and get your EOI. Normally you need at least 6 in each band before you can go ahead with your expression of interest. But based on your points, you may need more English because you may need to score some points through English in order to be eligible. I hope that's clear. Chetan saying my qualification is MBA in marketing and I have 11 plus years of sales representative, medical and pharmaceutical products in India. Can I need to take IELTS for migration in Australia? Yes, I think I answered your question, Chetan. So for skill assessment, you don't need English because your skill assessing authority don't require English. But for you to skill migrate to Australia for your EOI and for other requirements, yes, you will need at least minimum 6 in each band. Karthik's telling me that he will send us an email. Thank you so much, Karthik. We will reply to you. I think my time is up for today, but before I go, I will talk about what's coming up. So next week, I'm going to be covering all about Migration Queensland. So we are from Queensland because we are in Brisbane. So we thought we'll talk about Queensland first. So if you're interested in living or working, moving your family to sunny Queensland, watch our live video next week because I'm going to be covering everything you need to get an expression of interest from Queensland government. Until then, stay safe and I'll see you next week.